Kathleen Kennedy is the current president and CEO of Lucasfilm. She was an executive producer on a whole heap of films, including the Back to the Future trilogy, and was a producer on many others. She worked especially on movies with Steven Spielberg, and met George Lucas through her work on the Indiana Jones movies. Eventually, before George Lucas decided to sell his company to Disney, he chose Kathleen Kennedy to be his successor. In the years past, George Lucas has stated that Kennedy is the perfect fit and protector of his franchise and company. However, as we all know, people very much have had some problems with the way that Star Wars has gone since the Disney acquisition, and they have chosen to blame Kathleen Kennedy for a lot of these things. I hear all over the internet people villainizing and very much hating on Kathleen Kennedy for decisions that aren't always necessarily just her, and even more laughably, they completely ignore her involvement in anything that they deem to be good. Today, we will be responding to a video by Midnight's Edge, because I think it perfectly captures this exact mentality, the blind rage, unfair statements, and constant logical fallacies that this community often throws in Kathleen Kennedy's direction. The video is titled, "The Mandalorian may have saved Star Wars, but Kathleen Kennedy deserves no credit for it," which is a hilarious title, to put it bluntly. You can really taste almost the salt in the way it's written. And again, it is funny, but it's a bit worrying also. So let's start watching this video.
The last 5 minutes of The Mandalorian created more goodwill towards the Star Wars brand than anything in the 5 years that Disney has released.
This may seem like nitpicking, and it's right off the bat, but I think it's important to say. I think that this is a strange mentality. I do definitely agree that The Mandalorian has created a lot more goodwill for Star Wars amongst most fans than the sequel movies. I like the sequel movies, but I know a lot of people don't, and that's okay. And the way I see it, The Mandalorian is way more widely loved than the sequel trilogy. It's definitely more popular. But to say that the last 5 minutes alone of The Mandalorian created more goodwill for Star Wars than the whole sequel trilogy is a bit of a strange statement. I know why he's saying it. He's saying it because, look, this is the real Luke Skywalker. This Luke Skywalker's the ruined Kathleen Kennedy Luke Skywalker. But this is the good Luke Skywalker. And, I mean, not only do I obviously, not agree with this since I really do like the sequel movies, but I just think it's a ridiculous thing to say that, oh, the last 5 minutes of The Mandalorian was fighting against the sequel trilogy and is trying to undo it. It's feeding into that mentality that a lot of people have, where they think The Mandalorian's trying to undo the sequel trilogy, which is ridiculous. But anyway, we're not going to nitpick on too many little things, but I just felt it was a weird statement to have at the start of this video.
The brand had been run straight into the ground, something which caused lifelong fans to flee from it like rats from a sinking ship. The captain that rammed that ship headfirst into the biggest iceberg she could possibly find was, of course, Kathleen Kennedy.
The brand had been run into the ground. $4.5 billion in box office revenue for the sequel trilogy. $1.4 billion for the anthology movies. God knows what for the merchandise. 14 million copies of Battlefront. 10 million for Battlefront 2, and that number is still growing due to that game's newfound life. 10 million for Fallen Order in the first opening 2 weeks, making it the biggest opening 2 weeks of any Star Wars game of all time. And that's not mentioning the shows, books, and other products under the Star Wars umbrella. The Star Wars brand is far from dead.
Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, and George Lucas himself have done a great job picking up the pieces and giving Star Wars a new lease on life with The Mandalorian. But for some weird reason, there are some people out there that want to attribute The Mandalorian's success to Kathleen Kennedy.
George Lucas did not work on The Mandalorian. He did visit the set from time to time, and I'm sure he made comments here and there, but he did not work on the show. In fact, if you count George Lucas's involvement with The Mandalorian as working on The Mandalorian, then he's also worked on all of the new Star Wars films. I'm sure if Midnight's Edge loved Solo, a Star Wars story, then right now he'd be saying that George Lucas was heavily involved in the creation of the film because he was on set and making comments. Look, George Lucas is going to visit set. Everyone wants him to. But he didn't work on the show. He's not credited as working on the show. And the reason I say this point is because I feel like anyone who wants to criticize one part of Star Wars and praise another is going to just say, oh look, here's George Lucas. George Lucas is working on this, therefore it's good. He's not working on this, therefore it's bad. It's pretty much just a sign that he doesn't really have much evidence to work with, and so he fabricates some to try and get people on his side. Now, why is the weird reason that people attribute the success of The Mandalorian to Kathleen Kennedy? Well, Kathleen Kennedy was the original one to come up with the idea for The Mandalorian. She approved each and every episode, script, and story idea. She approved every decision because she is the CEO of the company. People have this strange belief that, again, because they like The Mandalorian, it can't be Kathleen Kennedy. They have this strange belief that Jon Favreau is on a different side. He's rebelling against Kathleen Kennedy. But this is completely wrong. If Kathleen Kennedy and Jon Favreau were having some sort of battle over the Star Wars brand, Kathleen Kennedy would win because she is the CEO. She is the president of Lucasfilm. And Jon Favreau is a hired director. I am not saying that Jon Favreau doesn't have control over his own story, and I am not saying that he doesn't deserve credit for the wonderful story that The Mandalorian tells. But if Kathleen Kennedy didn't think it would be right for Star Wars for this story to exist, and if Kathleen Kennedy was being rebelled against, then the show wouldn't exist. The only way for a show like The Mandalorian to exist is for Kathleen Kennedy to be 100% on board as well.
In this video, we will explore in detail why Kathleen Kennedy is directly and personally responsible for the downfall of Star Wars with the sequel trilogy, and why she deserves very little credit for The Mandalorian being successful in the first of many more steps left on the path towards an eventual redemption of Star Wars, as well as who, in addition to Favreau, Filoni, and Lucas, is also secretly helping out with charting a new path forwards for Star Wars.
It's a bit of a long clip, but I think it's very important. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If Kathleen Kennedy is going to be blamed for all of the Star Wars that you don't like, if you're going to say, she made this decision and this decision, then she also made the good ones. There's no way around it. You can't just pretend that since you like one thing, it can't be Kathleen Kennedy. But since you hate this thing, we'll just blame it on Kathleen Kennedy. Either everything's her fault or nothing's her fault. You can't just have it both ways.
When her new boss Bob Iger decided to take things in a safer direction by retreading Episode 4, she fully supported him. Her biggest contribution on that movie, outside of supporting everything Iger wanted, was to make Rey the bestest ever at everything, and mandate that the OG cast would never all be reunited. Instead, they would be killed off one by one over the course of the trilogy.
When I first saw this clip, I actually burst out laughing because of how dumb it is. Her biggest contribution was making Rey powerful. Do you have a source for that? That's something that goes throughout this whole video. There's not a single source or quote or evidence to back up anything that he's saying. He's just splurging useless information that he likely got from a Mike Zero video and acting as if it's just fact. The truth is, this video is not designed to be informative. It's designed to stir up hate and to get views. This statement that Kathleen Kennedy's only contribution to the sequel trilogy was killing the main characters and making Rey powerful is ridiculous. I can't believe someone's actually tried to make this point. Why do people believe that Kathleen Kennedy just runs into set and says, hey, kill Han Solo because I don't like Star Wars. Hey, Rey's a girl. Make her so powerful because I want Rey to be powerful because she's a girl. Like, this is not how movie sets work.
It was so successful that Bob Iger decided that, yeah, Kathleen Kennedy's got this. So for the next movie, he left everything in her hands.
So this really proves how much Midnight Edge just is basically pulling stuff out of his ass to villainize Kathleen Kennedy, because just about a minute earlier, he said that Kathleen Kennedy had no involvement in The Force Awakens, except for a couple of things that he didn't like. She didn't have anything to do with The Force Awakens, but apparently, after The Force Awakens' success, a movie, remember, that Kathleen Kennedy apparently had nothing to do with, then she gets full control of the next one because she's now got this. Now, if your claim was Kathleen Kennedy worked vigorously on The Force Awakens and now she can be left alone because it was a success, fine, that would be logically valid. But you're basically saying, hey, person that wasn't a part of the last movie, you've proven, by doing nothing, that you're now capable of taking the next movie on. It is so obvious that everything that's being said here is coming straight out of his ass just because he's salty about not liking the sequel trilogy. That's all this is. Midnight's Edge doesn't like the sequel trilogy and wants to find a reason to blame someone. It's a conspiracy theory, there's just nothing behind it. And it is funny to watch, admittedly, but Jesus Christ.
Rian Johnson is an ideologue. The first time he was in a Lucasfilm meeting room and told them that his idea for Luke Skywalker, the hero everyone wanted to see, was to make him the most pathetic loser ever caught on tape.
Before I say my point, I'm just going to play a clip from earlier on in the video, so let me play that real quick.
Lucas wrote treatments for the whole sequel trilogy, and he no doubt thought that Kathleen Kennedy would fight for them. But she didn't.
Okay, so in the video, Midnight's Edge says that Rian Johnson's big idea for The Last Jedi was to make Luke Skywalker a pathetic loser, and now that Kathleen Kennedy has the full control, inexplicably, wants to just run the character into the ground because she doesn't like Star Wars, and that she threw George Lucas's story treatments away. This is all extremely wrong, as most of this video is. The original treatment that George Lucas wrote for Episode 8 told a story of a Force-sensitive girl named Kira, who grew up on a desert planet, found an exiled and disgraced Luke Skywalker on an island, holding the first Jedi temple, being haunted by the dark side. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, The Last Jedi drew a whole load of inspiration from George Lucas's script, especially the darker and, as you explain it, pathetic side of Luke. Now, it's completely valid to still not like this. I believe it's the most interesting place to take the character, but if you don't like it, you don't like it. But just because you don't like it doesn't mean Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson were solely responsible for this. This was in George Lucas's original script. And like I'm saying, it's okay to think that this is still a bad idea, but I think that it's wrong to just say, oh, I don't like it. That's because Kathleen Kennedy got into power at this point, and then she started messing with Star Wars because she hates Star Wars. No, Kathleen Kennedy likes Star Wars a perfect amount to run the company. It just blows my mind that people truly believe that Kathleen Kennedy is trying to run a company into the ground that she bloody runs. The point is, if George Lucas held on to Star Wars, his sequel trilogy would have gotten the same amount of hate as this Disney trilogy. Not only because any new Star Wars just gets hated immediately, that's just how it works, but also because George Lucas's idea was extremely similar to The Last Jedi in particular. So if you didn't like the sequel trilogy, then you probably wouldn't have liked George Lucas's sequel trilogy either. So it's time to stop pretending that this was all just a big conspiracy of Kathleen Kennedy trying to ruin Star Wars, because George Lucas would have done the same, and Kathleen Kennedy absolutely was trying to defend George Lucas's treatments of these movies.
Have a purple-haired incompetent by proxy tell off every male member of the movie-going audience.
Holdo was not at any point trying to tell off the male audience. That's a lie that's been circulating about The Last Jedi since it came out. The story with Holdo was specifically to challenge Poe's character, and if you think the intention there was to tell off males or to be some sort of feminist propaganda, you're wrong. You aren't right about this. That is not the intention, nor is it the subtext. This is wrong. This is incorrect.
Not a lot is known publicly about the detailed development history of The Mandalorian, outside of what the involved parties have let on in public. He also said he pitched The Mandalorian to Kathleen Kennedy in the summer of 2017, and that she was the one who suggested he talk with Dave Filoni. The two of them would then proceed to work their magic, with the help of none other than George Lucas himself, while Kennedy worked her different brand of magic, let's say, with The Last Jedi and Solo, a Star Wars story on the big screen.
Yes, because Kathleen Kennedy went and worked on the movies while she left Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni alone to work on The Mandalorian, with George Lucas, of course, because Kathleen Kennedy had nothing to do with The Mandalorian. She wasn't trying to produce the show. She wasn't executive producer on the show. That would be ridiculous. It's not like she was on set. She was doing the movies. She wasn't even there. Do you see my problem with this video now?
She could still review, give notes, and come in with suggestions, but she didn't have the power that would usually come with her position.
Do you have a source for that? I think it's interesting that people actually believe this, because shortly after The Last Jedi, when for sure the controversy had already begun, people very much hated The Last Jedi, Kathleen Kennedy got reinstated as president and CEO of Lucasfilm. You see, her contract ended. I think she had a 10 or 5 year contract with Lucasfilm, and she was, that contract had come to an end, and Disney renewed it because they wanted her in that position. So why would you ever think that they would renew that just to take her power away a couple of months later? No, she had all of the powers that she would have had before. This is baseless, it's based on rumors that are absolutely not true, and again, it's wrong.
Favreau is aided by Dave Filoni and George Lucas, who is reportedly firmly back in the fold. Rumors that have reached us claim that Lucas may be even writing a future Star Wars project, possibly the Rogue Squadron movie, which is set to be directed by Patty Jenkins.
Rogue Squadron is written by Ali Dramil. I think I'm saying that name right, I hope I am. It's not written by George Lucas. George Lucas has no interest in working on Star Wars anymore. He's said this many times. He did not work on The Mandalorian.
Speaking of Marvel, there's apparently one more creative contributor from Marvel Studios who has secretly helped out behind the scenes.
What is with this secretly helping and, espionage almost of directing? I don't understand how anyone actually believes this. I mean, you think that they have people from other studios secretly helping with the show. Again, probably trying to say behind Kathleen Kennedy's back, because for some reason people think that there's an actual rebellion going on here. As if there are people trying to sneak around to make this show. As if one day they said, Kathleen Kennedy, we have made a show. And Kathleen went, what? You've made a show? I hate Star Wars. How have you done this without my knowledge? It's ridiculous.
Granted, Kathleen Kennedy is listed as an executive producer on The Mandalorian, but this is a marquee credit only. She gets it courtesy of being the head honcho of Lucasfilm, not for having made any kind of worthwhile creative contributions to the series.
Again, this is just another case of the hilarious, I don't like Kathleen Kennedy, therefore she can't have worked on a show I like. There's no evidence, there's no proof. Again, in the image that's been used over and over again in this video, this image, Kathleen Kennedy's right there. She wasn't just sitting twiddling her thumbs. She was working as a producer on this show. And for whatever reason, people like to pretend she wasn't. Kathleen Kennedy works on all Star Wars because she is the fucking CEO of Star Wars and Lucasfilm. That is her job. She is not paid to do nothing. It's her job. This video loves to reiterate over and over again that, she's working on this because it's something that I think won't be very good, but she can't be working on this. I like this thing. She's not working on it. That's George Lucas. George Lucas came back to work on this. It's baseless.
There are some who feel she should get credit simply because she's the head of Lucasfilm. However, this is the very mindset that allows someone to fail upwards.
This is the last point of the video, so I think it's a good time to say my conclusion here. Kathleen Kennedy has not failed in leading Star Wars. Star Wars is now even bigger than it ever has been. The sequel trilogy movies made a whole heap of money, and regardless of if you think they're good or not, that is the measure that is used by a business to see if a film has been successful or not. That's why she was reinstated as CEO of Lucasfilm after her contract ended. That's why she's had heaps of control over the Star Wars brand. Because even if you don't think the movies are good, in the eyes of Disney, she has been a huge, huge success. Again, I said those numbers earlier. Star Wars is making a huge amount of money. The amount that it cost Disney to buy the franchise in the first place, they made that back after The Force Awakens alone. Star Wars makes a hell of a lot of money, and in my opinion, I think the new Star Wars content has been fantastic from a fan's point of view. I know that everyone doesn't agree with that, and that can only just be my opinion, and I'm not going to try and convince anyone otherwise. But the point is, the only objective measure we have of a success of a franchise is the amount of money it makes, and Star Wars has been making a lot of money. Therefore, on an objective level alone, Kathleen Kennedy has done a wonderful job of taking this franchise to the next step. This whole idea that Kathleen Kennedy has been failing for years is just based on not liking The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi, financially, did exceptionally well. So, all in all, does Kathleen deserve credit for The Mandalorian? Absolutely, yes. She's not only the CEO, but an executive producer on the series. And while you may say that her accreditation as a producer on this was completely empty and that she never really produced the show, this is baseless. She absolutely did produce the show. There is no reason to believe that she didn't. The points in this video are pretty much all either baseless, completely incorrect, or just based on opinion alone. There's no real facts that come out of this video, and therefore there's no reason to believe that Kathleen Kennedy actually is being espionaged from Lucasfilm, or that she doesn't deserve credit for the shows that her company produces. So that brings this absolutely massive video to a close. I'd love to have more discussions with you guys in the comments down below about this topic. I really like making these types of videos that we can all talk about together as a community. You guys are very civil in the comments, so it's great to see that. So please do leave your thoughts down below so I can read and hopefully respond to as many of them as possible. Also, I just want to mention that this video is in no way trying to throw shade at Midnight's Edge. He makes good content. I have no problem with him. I just disagree with him on this point. And, from time to time, other ones, but that's okay. Two people are allowed to disagree. I do know that I'm sometimes quite sarcastic in how I pull my points across, but again, I've got no problem with him. I don't want you guys to, go to his channel or anything. So, either way, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed, please hit that subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment for me. And maybe even hit that like button. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.